Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm pretty excited about this one. Today I wanted to have a little discussion about this new indie game, or newer indie game I saw. It's called Mouthwashing. When I first saw this, I wasn't really expecting much. I think I was expecting another one of those horror indie games that have like those PS1 style graphics we've been seeing a lot of lately. And there's nothing wrong with those, but ones that come to mind are like the puppet combo games and stuff. I really like those, but that's kind of what I was expecting. Nothing revolutionary. But, I'm pretty happy to report that I was wrong. There's nothing really standard or boring about Mouthwashing, in my opinion. It's easily become one of my favorite games in recent memory, which is really saying something because it's kind of short. And in this little indie title, the developer, Wrong Organ, I think they masterfully create this small, cramped experience that's dripping with personality and dread. From its setting, which in this case comes in the form of the Pony Express company ship called the Tulpar, like a long-haul freighter, all the way to its ensemble cast of colorful characters. To me, this narrative had me enraptured throughout my entire playthrough. And just to put it simply, I loved it. I love this game, and I want to talk about it. Before I get into my discussion, though, a brief word of warning, as always. I'm going to spoil a few things as we discuss this. I'm going to try and keep it minimal, but just to be honest, I'm going to spoil some things. So you should probably go play it. It's pretty short. It's readily available. You can find it anywhere. Just go play it, come back, and then, join in on the discussion. And with that, let's go ahead and get started. The initial premise of Mouthwashing is pretty simple to understand. We've seen this kind of story before. The cargo ship, the Tulpar, which I just mentioned, is on a delivery mission when an accident occurs. It damages the ship beyond repair, and I'll get to that accident more in a little bit. The 5 crew members, who I'll also introduce in a little bit, are stranded and must survive long enough to be rescued by the company. That if the company is going to come rescue them. Kind of a commentary on like capitalism and where it'll leave us, I guess. As the months go by, however, a more complex narrative unravels. It's told predominantly through the use of both flashbacks and contemporary sequences. And the story really gives us, the player, insight into past decisions and honestly how those decisions directly impact the crew in the present as they struggle to survive. The crew, for their part, are really the highlight of the story. There are 5 crew members on the Tulpar. First, we have our captain, Curly, who becomes a bigger part of the story in a little bit, and then his first officer, Jimmy. Next, we have the ship's medical officer, Anya, and finally, there's the ship's mechanic, Swansea, and his apprentice of sorts, Daisuke. Most of the crew don't really like each other, and it's their interactions that really drive the story forward. After the accident I mentioned earlier, the player's told that it was Captain Curly who intentionally crashed the ship. He guided it into an asteroid, and we kind of play through that sequence a little bit. The crew survives that accident, though, and it's the captain that's now lying burnt to a crisp on his bed in the medical room. And horrifyingly, Curly seems to comprehend what's happening around him, but he cannot communicate or move in any meaningful way. It's a bit of I have no mouth and I must scream, which is kind of cool. With the captain out of commission, the player then takes control of the first officer, Jimmy. Jimmy attempts to lead the crew as they fight to survive. They're trying to stretch out food and look for new resources as the months go by. This is challenging though, since many of the areas of the ship have been blocked by this spray foam-like substance that was released to close off breaches in the hull after the accident. A few months pass and things are getting worse for the survivors. The crew is running out of food and Curly's running out of medication. Flashbacks periodically happen throughout the story. We always knew that the crew didn't really like each other, but in these flashbacks we learn just how bad things between them were. For example, in one of the scenes, Curly reveals to his entire crew that they are going to be laid off after the mission as the Pony Express is shutting down, or at least the Tulpar is, I don't remember which one. And this causes massive disruptions, as you can imagine. The crew kind of relies on this, and we live in this world where it's hard for them to find other jobs. Anya even reveals at one point in the story that she was attacked and assaulted by Jimmy. This becomes such a huge part of the story, as the choices that people make from this point directly impact how the story unfolds going forward. Curly, our captain, remember, who is supposed to protect his crew, fails to address the issue in any meaningful way. This event also has the effect of immediately casting the player's new character, Jimmy, into a whole new light. You realize quickly that you are playing as the monster of this horror story. Knowing this doesn't really help, though, because we still lose some sense of control as we watch Jimmy do horrible things, which eventually lead to the death of most of his crew. This loss of control, to me, honestly, is a huge theme of the game, or at least I believe it is. The entire crew, including Captain Curly, have no real control over their own ship. In fact, it was the lack of control with the doors that led to Anya being attacked in her own quarters by Jimmy. Even after the accident, Anya must continue to work with the monster that hurt her. In fact, the entire crew honestly knows that Jimmy is a monster, at least most of them do. Yet they feel as though they have no control to really stop things. And then finally we, the player, do not have any choice but to play as Jimmy, making us feel almost complicit in his crimes. Throughout the rest of the story, we see Jimmy unravel and fail to effectively handle any of the situations that he's presented with. Once their crew runs out of food, for instance, they decide to break into their cargo hold, which is like a big no-no with the company, and it's revealed that their hold is filled entirely with mouthwash, which is just honestly crazy. They start to drink the mouthwash because, of course, that's all they have. What else are they going to do? And it's from this point that their behavior and emotions quickly devolve further. Mouthwash in this story, to me at least, seems to be a strong metaphor, I think. Mouthwash, they state here that mouthwash kills 99.9% of germs, but it leaves that last little bit. That last dead pixel that ruins the entire image, as Anya pointed out to Curly in an earlier scene. I think that is what Mouthwashing, the game, is about. That last little bit, perhaps. We try to ignore that small percentage, but it's there. It can do damage. The characters in this story often ignore signs, thinking that that small percentage can't harm them, in the case of Jimmy, or that it doesn't define a person when Anya's talking about both Jimmy and herself, I think. We ignore the warnings right in front of us, then before we know it, it's too late. We even watch as Jimmy spirals into madness, allowing us to see events from Curly's perspective. We can't fix anything, of course, no matter how much we want to, no matter what Jimmy believes. The mouthwash can't clean his or the crew's mistakes. Too much has already happened, too much has been lost, and there's no last-minute rescue coming. Even as they hold on to that small, minuscule chance that it might. Mouthwashing kills 99.9% of germs after all. I've said it here a few times now, but overall, I really loved Mouthwashing. It's a short game. It won't take you very long to play it all. But I'd recommend it for anybody who's interested in a strong, character-driven, claustrophobic space story. The horror of Mouthwashing, to me, lies in its desperation. Watching as a group of complex characters starve to death and struggle to grasp onto the last bit of humanity they have left is tragic. I probably don't understand everything that Mouthwashing is trying to say to me, trying to tell me, but I had a good time trying to figure that out. And I think you will too. If I was going to rate Mouthwashing on a tier list, for instance, I would give it a solid A. There's some sections where you separate from the story a little bit and you play these little mini segments on a different place that sometimes take place in Jimmy's head, I believe, or I don't know if it's sometimes in Curly's head, but those take away from the overall story, I think. I think they're important, but I think they go on a little too long. They overstay their welcome. I think if we made those smaller or got rid of them, I think this game would be a solid S tier. I don't think they were super needed. You may disagree, but let me know if you do. That's really the only weak point. I think if those were gone, this would be an S tier game. With that out of the way, just want to say thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next review.